12 years of age. I had signed up for 2 weeks of Boy Scout camp, which marked a time, really the first time that I was away from home. At the end of the first week, in the midst of 2 days of rain, I found my stomach to be very tight, and I had no desire to eat. And I found myself doing a great deal of reflection about my parents and our home. And I wrote them a letter, which my mother has saved, and said in the letter, "I love you all so much," which I just found out, and spelled which, W-I-T-C-H. My mother remembers the spelling. I remember the feeling. I remember a time in Fairview Park in Decatur. I had been on campus at Millikan University in Decatur for 10 days. And I remember walking through the park in the early evening and thinking about the kind of love and the kind of sacrifice that my parents had gone through for me in my life. And there was kind of a distillation of feelings and a deep appreciation for them. And I wrote again a letter home, a letter in which I was able to express some of the most intimate feelings that I had for my parents, more intimately expressed than I was able to do in their presence. It seems to me that one of the mysteries of life is that memory can often bring us closer to each other than can physical presence. In absence, from a distance, in memory, we see each other in a new way. We are less distracted by each other's idiosyncrasies and are better able to see and understand each other's inner core or each other's essence. There is little doubt that memory can distort, it can falsify, and it can cause selective perception. But memory also clarifies, purifies, brings into focus, and calls to the foreground hidden gifts. When we remember each other with love, we evoke each other's spirit, and so enter into a new intimacy, a spiritual union with each other. At the same time, however, the loving memory always makes us desire to be in touch again, to see each other anew, to return to the shared life. But a deeper presence always leads again to a more purifying absence. Thus, the continuous interplay between presence and absence, linked by our creative memory, is the way in which our love for each other is purified, is deepened, and sustained. In his farewell discourse, Jesus said to his disciples, "It is for your own good that I am going, because unless I go to the advocate, unless I go, the advocate will not come to you," the advocate being the Spirit. "But when the Spirit of truth comes, he will lead you to the complete truth." Here Jesus reveals to his closest friends that only in absence will real intimacy with him be possible, that only in memory will their experience be the experience of the full meaning of his life. We here eat bread, but not enough to take our hunger away. We here drink wine, but not enough to take our thirst away. We read from a book, but not enough to take our ignorance away. The simple signs, which cannot satisfy all our desires, speak first of Christ's absence. But even as we affirm his absence, we realize that he already is with us. We say to each other, eat and drink, for this is his body and his blood. The one we are waiting for is our food and drink, and is more present to us than we can be to ourselves. There is a continuous interplay then between absence and presence as we partake of his Last Supper. Well, it seems to me there are implications for our own lives here in regard to absence and presence. We're called to be living reminders of Jesus. I have met ministers in the last decade, and my perception has been that for many of them, there is no buoyancy anymore, no wonder, no zest, that life for them is routine and professional. It is staid and somber. And I want to ask them, what's happened? What's missing? What's wrong? It seems to me that some lights have gone out in some lives of my friends. And I suggest to you this morning that perhaps the answer is that there's been too much presence and too little absence. Too much staying with people and too little leaving them. That there has been about so many of my brothers' lives a tragic illusion of indispensability. And so the endless meetings, the invocations, the service club meetings, the working in community service, a kind of frantic going around in circles, no longer perhaps the way, but more in the way. Remember, we concluded our worship experience last Sunday by lifting up the word seek first, and to remind you today that the first commandment that Jesus gave us is to love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. And to do that means that there needs to be absence. There needs to be time when the minister is absent from his people and present to his God. And on all the ministerial profiles, there is no blank that asks that kind of question. How would it be to pick up the phone and ask for me? And have Hazel respond, this is his day in the desert. This is his day away. I'm thankful that you have provided me with those kinds of days away, so that I can bring something fresh and hopefully new and vital to you and to your hearts. There are some disadvantages to being over the river and through the woods, and there are some advantages. And one of those advantages is time of absence, time for being most present to God. I had an experience in my first church in which I had gone to one of my parishioners' timber parcels. It was a little over 100 acres of timber. And there on a Friday I was filled with the Spirit, and every leaf and every piece of goldenrod seemed to speak to me. And I came back to the congregation that Sunday and announced that I was in Earl Schmidt's timber, and the message I was to bring them would be from that timber. And the message of the morning was lengthy, and it was dull, and it was a monstrous bomb. And on the way out of the service, my friend Earl Schmidt said to me, "I don't know what spirit you met out in my timber, but I doubt if it was the Holy Spirit." There are days like that out in the timber, but most of the days for me have been meeting days with the Spirit. And so the question comes, what implications are there for your life? What of you? You who are also called to be living reminders of the Nazarene. If you've heard anything from me in these some 17 months, it's been words of needing to be present to our wives, men, and women needing to be present to our husbands, and mothers and fathers, the need to be present to our children, and our need to be present to our friends, and our need to be present to those in need, and lifting up for you the deep meaning of intimacy. But I suggest to you in the midst of these heavy snowfalls that there's also the need for absence, the need to be absent from our wives and husbands, to be absent from our children, to be absent from our friends, to be absent from those in need, to be so absent that we can be present to the Spirit of God. And in that presence, to find new and fresh resources to bring to our wives and husbands, to our children, to our friends, and to those in need. Here at this table, in his absence and in his presence, may you find the meeting of your deepest needs, and may you find the strength to be living reminders of the Nazarene.